living in a large world with many problems. To solve these problems, we need to be able to communicate. To communicate, we need to understand. To understand, we need to speak. To speak, we need a language.
The origin of speech is a widely discussed topic, but we do not know what the first language actually was. In fact, the topic is so debated that some of the groups and universities has banned this subject due to missing evidence, thus eliminating possibilities for proper research. Although the human being has the most complex way to communicate with sounds and vocal cords, we are not the only ones who can communicate through sounds, but there is a huge difference between a dog barking and two human beings having a conversation. But how did we develop this ability? It is easy to say that it all started with a monkey who began speaking. However, it is a lot more difficult to describe how this took place. The truth is that we only can imagine what actually happened.
Before we can begin talking about this subject, we need to go back in time.
Researchers believe that we can compare today's non-human primates' way of speech to the early Homo sapiens. The non-human primates that we know today use simple sounds to symbolize words or actions. The simple sounds are at different sound levels depending on the meaning of the word. To further add variation, the primate uses body language to express the emotions behind the sound. It's the anatomical structure of the primate's throat that prevent them from developing more advanced sounds. The human being's speech is called categorically differentiated, as opposed to graded, which is what the primates use. Categorically differentiated means that we produce sounds with not only varying sound levels, but also considerably different sounds. When the early Homo sapiens evolved bipedalism, the ability to walk on two legs, the anatomical infrastructure slowly developed a slightly different throat and skull structure. The new structure allowed for a lower placement of the larynx, which in turn allowed for more specialized sounds.
Most languages can be divided into language families. A so-called language family is a group of languages that come from the same proto-language, also called a parent language. The most common family is the Indo-European language. Most of the languages we speak in Europe, Southern Asia and the Iranian Plateau come from the Indo-European family. Some of the languages in the family are Spanish, Italian, English and French, and those are of course just a few of the languages. However, the Indo-European is not the family that has the highest amount of languages. It is only 439 of the languages that we know today that come from the Indo-European family. In the family Niger-Congo there are 1,532 languages, but most of them are spoken in Africa. So if you look at it worldwide, the family is not very widespread. But you can go closer to today's languages. A good example is Spanish and French. Those languages come from Latin. However, Latin comes from Italy and was the first spoken language in the Italian peninsula. Latin is also a part of the Indo-European family, but today the language is called a dead language, which means it's not used anymore. French and Spanish are not the only languages that come from Latin. A lot of the languages we use today actually started as Latin, so you can relate most languages to each other that way, and it all ends up in the language families.
Brussels is the capital of communication, hosting both the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the European Union. During these events, representatives from each country gather in the meeting in NATO. There are 28 countries involved. The number of representatives from each country depends on the size of the country and their influence, which sums up to, well, very many people. All of these people are politicians and other representatives, and as such, they all have individual opinions, and ideally, they should all be able to get their opinions out. To make matter worse, barely any of them speak the same language. Each individual language needs a translator who speaks at least 3 languages fluently, resulting in a need for at least 9 translators per country. That is the epitome of global communication. The advantages with the translator are that you don't have to know the English language to participate in the meetings, so that you can express your opinion no matter what.
Over 2.2 billion people are using the internet for communication today. There are a lot of ways you can communicate on the internet, for example an ordinary email, Facebook, Skype, and so on. You can also communicate with your friends at any time and any place due to the new high technology, like the new smartphones and alike. Due to the new high technology, you can also share, tweet, +1, or like your friends' pictures, and so on. For less than 20 years ago, the internet did not exist. Instead, we used regular mail and in some cases even carrier pigeons to communicate with people worldwide. This shows how much we have developed in a small amount of time. But is it a good thing that it turned out to be the internet instead of letters? Is it really a good thing that we can communicate to each other in seconds? It is amazing how fast people can contact you today. The only thing we need is to log on Facebook or other social networks and write to the person we want to contact. The person you're trying to communicate with can respond instantly if the person is online. Compared to the old times, it is genius, because back there you had to wait for the response for at least a week. But there is some inconveniences with the internet as well. For example, the Kony 2012 video. The big problem with the video was that people believed in it, without any real evidence. It seemed like the information he gave to the people was not correct, or at least not all of it.
One of the biggest factors that prevent third world countries from developing is that they cannot communicate properly. With the missing communication, it is hard to transport different materials they need, especially through the desert. It's not easy to get through the desert at the first place, and they do not have the roads for it. So if they can't even get in contact with the people they have to deliver it to, it will be very hard to get to the right location. That problem is actually easy to solve. Just help them make some good roads. That is actually just what China are doing in Africa. But they are not doing it to help them. They're just doing it to be able to gather the raw materials there and be able to transport them to their own country. So even though it looks like they're trying to help, they're actually just exploiting their bad situation. However, it will make it easier for the people who live there to get around, but it's not like they're the saviors of Africa. They just act like it. So we need to help them, that is for sure. Some might say that we're already helping them by sending them money. But that is not what they need the most right now. They need education, roads, communication devices, and so on. They cannot use the money we give them right now because they don't have the resources or workers to use them for anything. It's not that they can't use the money later, but right now they are just used by the wrong people to the wrong things. So you could call it an evil circle which held them back because they cannot communicate with each other and then cannot develop the same technology as us and can't buy it either because they do not have the money to afford it.
Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. But I really have to go now. Goodbye.
Languages, language, language, languages, language, 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 languages, 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 the languages, 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 those languages, language, the language, a dead language, languages, 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 language families.
This shows how much we have developed. This shows how much this shows how much we have delivered. This shows how much we have This shows This shows how much we have developed.
Oh my.
This shows how much we have developed in a small amount of time.
Lepol. Most languages can be divided into languages.
It is easy to say that it all started.